The Silly Goose Gang Podcast.
And we are back online, and we're delighted to be joined this evening, and we can say this evening because he's in the same time zone as us for once. We've got Daniel Strauss, the Raspberry Ape, joining us. So, Dan, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, it's you're one of the more interesting characters in the UK. So we're just saying you might be the silliest goose here. Might not be me and Ali this time. So, yeah. You might be one of the most interesting, colourful characters in the UK jiu-jitsu scene, right?
Well, you know what? I appreciate that. And I think at the end of the day, that's what you got to do. You know, life's short. You got to enjoy it. And if I can bring some entertainment and then be entertaining in any way or be interested in any way, then that's fantastic.
100%. You know, one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about was your are you calling it strength and conditioning? You're the way you know lifting all the stones, and you do some very unique things.
Yeah, and I'd call it strength and conditioning. It's sort of that physical, just accessory work. It is still accessory work, even though it's kind of taken a life of its own over the last. I've been doing it for a very long time now. I've been lifting weights for probably 12 years at this point, so over a decade. But yeah, it's unique to some people. It's funny because if I was to go into a commercial gym and watch someone do a hamstring curl on a machine, that would be as odd to me as someone watching me juggling steel balls is to maybe a person who goes to the standard gym. So uniqueness is a relative concept. It
definitely seems. Yeah, definitely. I mean, right, around about the time the country went into lockdown, whenever that was, March, whenever it was, and I had a lot of friends saying, I'm not going to be able to go to the gym, I can't lift weights. I'm like, listen, if you really, really don't have any equipment and can't do anything, find a big fucking stone and pick it up repeatedly. I mean,
yeah,
that seems like something that you like doing. So, it's as good as anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
well,
that's it. And stones were the original tools that our species used to improve their strength. It's part of the land, it's part of the earth. You can walk around anywhere and you can find some stones. These days, with people who are cut down, if you walk through most woods, you'll find some trees that have fallen naturally, but a lot of woods that are being managed. You'll also find a lot of trees that have been felled and cut. And they also make for fantastic lifting tools. Can be a little bit messier because you get some woods that are a little bit damp and rotted. But yeah, absolutely. Not only can you lift stones, I like to go into the woods. I like to go for walks. I like to pick up logs, and depending on the size and shape, you can squat them or press them or carry them or curl them or swing them, and you could do so much with it. I think a lot of people have a very narrow-minded and very particular idea of what strength training or go into the gym. I hate that term. I hate the term go into the gym. I'm going to the gym because it kind of verifies and it solidifies that view of go into the gym becomes a synonym for exercising, and that's not the case. And it's not the case that going to the gym doesn't mean you're getting stronger, and going to the gym doesn't mean you're getting bigger. It's a very, very small part. Going to the gym can mean that, but you can also run through a woods and run up a mountain and lift rocks and throw trees about, and you can get a fantastic benefit doing that in many more ways, or very different ways than if you were just going to a gym.
So do you just treat this all as life rather than I'm going to the gym, I'm going to work out? Is this just life? Is this just the life of Dan Strauss? Is this just
in a way? I think it's a combination of those two things. I do go to the gym. I go into my garage and I call it lifting. I just call it lifting or strength training. But a lot of people, let's say you go to the gym religiously every single week. Let's say you go to the gym for an hour a day, 4 days a week. You would say that an average person, if you go to the gym for an hour, 4 times a week, would call you very dedicated, very fitness conscious. They'd say that you were a really fit and active person. how many hours are there in 7 days? How many hours are there in a week? And you spend 4 of those doing something active, and that makes you an active person. The real question is, what are you doing with the other 100 and, however many hundreds of hours would make up a week? Or just over probably 150 or 60 hours or something like that. I'm not going to bother trying to do fast maths at this time of night, but you see what I'm saying, which is people who go to the gym and they think that they're living an active lifestyle. They're not necessarily living an active lifestyle. Do you drive an hour and a half to work and then sit at a desk for 8 hours a day and then drive an hour and a half home? And then you go to the gym for an hour 4 times a week. You're not living an active life. But maybe someone who doesn't go to the gym at all, but their job is a very physical job and they walk a lot and they walk their dogs for an hour and a half a day. And, maybe they're lifting bags of cement as part of their job. That's actually going to be a far more active life, and it's going to be put in a far more better position in both a health and performance way than someone who, so it's a combination of two. Yes, I do go into my gym and I do lift weights a couple of times a week, but then I'm also rolling or walking the dog or playing, running around the woods and lifting up trees and stones and stuff like that as well.
So I was just going to say, Ali, sorry. I lift. I like lifting weights. I just like lifting weights, but I love climbing hills and swimming in locks and all this kind of stuff. But is there something that led you down this path? Were you like doing conventional S&C training, and then something changed you to do more fun, or was it what was the?
Yeah, so I've done. I didn't start training how I train now. I've done a lot of things. I started with initially a pretty much purely conditioning style of training. I would basically just doing circuit training. Then I read a book called Dinosaur Training, which was sort of got me into lifting weights. At that point, I was kind of sticking to the main big compound lifts. I was doing bench and deads and overhead press and pull-ups and stuff like that. And then I got more into sort of powerlift, and I injured my back. So for a very long time, I wasn't doing any deadlifts, but I was doing lots of bench, lots of squats, and your other standard barbell work. Got really into sort of powerlifting. And focusing very heavily on getting big numbers on those big lifts that I like to do. Then the gym that I was training at the time and the guys that I was training with were getting into strongman competitions. So even though I never competed in strongman, I was doing a lot of the same training. So it was yokes and Atlas stones and farmers walks and stuff like that. And then sort of I slowly kind of listened to my body and found the stuff that I enjoyed and found the stuff that I really found benefit with. And my training today is different to how my training was a year ago. And I imagine that my training in a year will be different to how my training is today. It's always evolving. It's always adapting. I have different goals. I like to set myself goals along the way. The priority is always being a strong and capable individual for life and the mats, or my life, which involves being on the mats and throwing other humans around. So that's always that's the spine of the training. But then the other stuff I'll set on the way will be giving myself goals within the world of strength. And that gives me a sort of background focus to work on, be that bending a specific type of steel or lifting a specific stone or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's the stones seem to be something that you're, because I've seen you've lifted quite a few, the Denny stones, for example, and then the Dalwhinnie stone, and what are the ones near Balquhidder? What are those called again?
The ones in Balquhidder is the would be the Saddling Mare.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Saddling Mare. Yeah. So in terms of the historic stone lifting is something that I got into initially through the Denny stones. I kind of knew about it, and I bought some training handles for the Denny stones. And originally with my back injury, I didn't think that I'd be able to ever do them. And I started training with these things, and I was like, not only is my back not getting worse, my back's actually getting better doing this. It goes completely against the standard intuition of, the last thing you want to be doing is lifting 300 kilos. You're going to hurt your back. I'm like, wait a minute. My back's already hurt. This is fixing my back. And this has been the story for the last couple of years of my life, which is you watch my Instagram and the comments on my Instagram, oh, this is so bad for your back. Go, well, hold up. My back's broken. Like I have a crack in my spine. You don't know anything about bad backs. I have a bad back, and I've had a bad back, and I know what it's like. And this doesn't make it worse. This makes it better. So I started training for the Dinny Stones and made that into a challenge that I wanted to achieve. Trained for that. I achieved that. And in doing so, in part of the process of getting into, it was kind of a dual process, which was one, getting more into the history and culture of historical stone lifting, and also having a stronger back so I could do stuff like picking stones off the ground, because even though the weight is much heavier with the Dinnies, you're lifting them in a much easier style with that straddling deadlift position, whereas with the standard historical lifting stone, you're going to be bending down very low, which usually would be hurting my back a lot more. But I found that my back was a lot stronger. So basically, when I did the Dinnies, the Inver stone is very close by. It's about 20 minutes away. So after I finished the Dinnies, I ate a pack of cookies for strength, and then drove to the Inver stone and lifted the Inver stone. And then that gave me a real interest to travel around Scotland. I really think Scotland is one of the most beautiful countries, or one of the most beautiful places in the world. One of my favorite countries, one of my favorite places in the world as well. And being able to, so when I went just before the pandemic, or at the beginning of it, early March, before everything got shut down, I was doing a seminar tour. And as part of that seminar tour, I did 5 seminars around Scotland, all the way around Scotland. From sort of the bottom of Scotland all the way up to Inverness, and on the way, managed to see this beautiful country, teach these jiu-jitsu seminars, and then go and lift all of these historical stones, all part of the same trip. So that was really, really, really fun. Really loved it. And there's kind of 5 or 6 stones still left in Scotland for me to lift, and they'll be on my list to do next time.
I haven't, I haven't. How do you go about lifting? No, I think that you can just go and lift, right? That's just there to be lifted. Is that right?
It depends on the individual stone. It's such an important part, because of me promoting the Scottish stones, especially, and lifting stones in general, through my Instagram, and also through the mini series that I did. Not that I have a huge, massive following, but I have a following. The world of stone lifting is actually really small. So when I did the stone lifting that I've done, and the documentary that I did, or the series that I did around it, did get it into the eyes of a lot of people who didn't know it existed. And and a lot of people said that they were inspired to go and lift the stones, or train to lift the stones, because of that. But anyone who has done that, you've got to play by the rules. You've got to do it right. And the way that you do it right is by really studying and understanding not just the history, but understanding and respecting the stone itself and the etiquette around it. So to answer your question, some stones are lying in the middle of a field and on public land, and you can just go and lift them. Other stones, such as the Dinny, so Dinny is kind of unique in that it is chained up. It is owned. It's outside of a restaurant and a hotel, and you have to book your attempting. Then you'll have something like I believe I'm hopefully pronouncing it relatively right, the Mingus stone, which is at Mingus Castle, which although it's just lying outside, you technically could drive up and lift it. I believe that the etiquette is to contact, it still is to contact someone there and ask for permission to lift it. For example, unfortunately, she passed about a month or 2 back. But originally, the Inverstone was looked after by a lovely lady called June Richards. The etiquette, again, knock on the door, ask her for permission to lift the stone. And so it's different things. Something like the Fianna stone, for example, is just in a field. The Sadlin Mare is just in a field. So some of the stones you can just go up to and lift. Some of the stones you have to book in. Some of them you can basically go and lift, but it's same with the Putrak stone. It's in someone's land, so you just knock on the door of the house and ask if you can play with their stone, basically. So,
That's,
everyone very welcoming and nice that I've come across.
the people in those parts of Scotland generally are very, very nice. You know, Edinburgh, Glasgow, like most, big cities are. Some people aren't so friendly, but when you go to the Highlands and rural Scotland, everybody's lovely.
Yeah,
Everybody's
they
really
are,
nice,
and to be honest, even in the big cities, I've always found the people of Scotland to be a very welcoming people, and I've never had a problem with anyone. And
generally,
yeah.
They just
Chris hates Edinburgh. That's all I
I really don't. Do you know
Edinburgh.
why? Right? I work in Edinburgh. No, sorry, I don't work in Edinburgh. I work for myself, and I'm often in Edinburgh. I just work with a lot of people who have a problem, and I'm the first person they usually get to complain to. So, when I go to a city, they normally complain to me, and I go, "Fucking Edinburgh." But yeah, it's not Edinburgh. Everybody, it's just that's just what happens. But it's funny because I passed Dalwell today. I was away up to the north of Scotland today, and it's one of those things like, never just like stop in and go, fuck it, I'm just going to go and let the store and fucking press it, and I might have to look into that. Actually, that might be quite fun.
So, did you say the Dalwhinnie?
The Dalwhinnie stone, yeah. So I passed.
Yeah. So the Dalwhinnie's outside. It's outside of the Shack Hut, I believe, or Shake Hut. It's outside of a restaurant, and it's just lying there. And as far as I'm aware, that you don't need to ask permission to lift it. You can literally just go up and lift it. Obviously, respect. One of the big things with the stones is anyone listening who's interested in lifting stones, they are not stones. They are pieces of history. They're artifacts and should be treated. So be very careful about dropping the stone. Try and place the stone down gently as if you were, I've never had to worry about that because I've always been so concerned about breaking a stone. So I always try and put the stone down with as much care as possible. But people kind of forget that they have, they think it's just a rock. It's not a rock. It's a special rock. Be nice to the special rock, basically. But in terms of the Dalwhinnie stone, you could drive past there, you can get out, you can limber up a little bit and give it a crack.
I might have to try. I pass not all that often, but I pass Balquhidder quite regularly. As in fact, if you find yourself in that neck of the woods again, this is not a plug. This is just true. There's a little hotel near Balquhidder called the Monarchial Moor. And it's the most fun. And I didn't stay there. I had to go there for work. And it's the most unbelievable little hotel. You drive along this little road by the side of a loch and you go, there's no fucking hotel. There cannot be a hotel along here. Yeah. And you get to like 5 miles round here and there's this little beautiful little hotel that's at the end of a loch. It's an amazing place. So this seems to be more of a travel show. This is not what I was expecting tonight at all. It's like
our podcast always go, isn't it?
It's a long advert. It's a long advert for Visit Scotland. Yeah.
Three ridiculous men talk hotels in Scotland. It's just one of those things where your Instagram is always full of your training videos, and it's quite interesting to see how other people do it. So how much of that stuff do you do, like in comparison to your, training, your actual jiu-jitsu training? Do you?
Yeah. So if you were to look at my Instagram, a lot of people ask me, "Are you still training jiu-jitsu?" Or the reality is that the stuff that if you looked at my Instagram, you wouldn't know for the most part. Unless you sort of really had a deep dive in there, you wouldn't know for the most part that I even did jiu-jitsu. I don't post a huge amount because what is it that I'm going to post a picture of the guys after training. I find it a little bit boring, to be honest with you, neglecting the fact that we're not meant to be training jiu-jitsu at the moment anyway. But I'll ignore that for now. But even in general, we're I train jiu-jitsu more often than I lift, basically. So at the moment, I'm definitely doing a lot less jiu-jitsu than I normally would be, just because of the situation that we're in at the moment and the limited capacity that gyms are running and such. So I'm training about 3 times a week now, 3 or 4 times a week, and I usually lift 2 or 3 times a week. So but usually on beforehand it would be 2 or 3 times lifting and 4 or 5 times a week doing jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I saw a video you posted, and again, just for Instagram and the way the algorithm works, it could have been any point in the last week, but I saw it this morning, and it was one of you working. You were talking about working like your suplex movement with it
Yeah.
looked like a Swiss ball and a couple of resistance bands. Is that what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this was the Swiss ball, something that I've been doing very recently. I actually saw a video of someone training for stone lifting with a Swiss ball, and they had the Swiss ball in front of their body, and they were holding a barbell sort of. So imagine that you're holding a barbell out in front, and between the barbell and your body is a Swiss ball being slightly compressed, and then kind of basically forcing you to lift, and you can add weight to the barbell to make that harder. And I thought it looked really cool, so I bought a Swiss ball, and I never blew it up. I never did anything. Then I saw another video of someone who had not filled, but put some water in the Swiss ball, and they were throwing the Swiss ball over their head. And I thought, now that looks super cool. So I got the Swiss ball out, and I filled it with about maybe between 10 and 20 kilos of water. And when it was nice and sunny, I was throwing it about. And it's a fantastic and fun exercise, and the water sloshes around and makes it really awkward. Then I was kind of hugging it and feeling it, and thought, man, this feels like this hugging position is a very bear huggy position. So I was sort of did another exercise where I was shaking it about, and then I was training a couple of days ago. I was training on Monday, and the guy that I was training with, he said it was his first session down at the cave. And he said, I saw you doing that, throwing the Swiss ball over your back. And we're like, it was pissing with rain outside, so we couldn't go outside and do that. So I was thinking, how can we overload that sort of triple extension movement with the ball? So we got the Swiss ball, got the bands attached to the ground, and was doing this band assisted sort of suplex position. Super hard. It is much harder than it looks, but super beneficial. And yeah, that's how it is. That's how a lot of my training is. It's a lot of experimentation and a lot of exploring and trying new ideas and being creative.
I just go back to what you were saying at the start there, Daniel, about, if you tried to do it in a commercial gym, the looks would be like, if you're just like, sorry, can you move aside, please? I need a Swiss ball and 2 resistance bands because I'm going to practice my suplex. But I already know.
Yeah. It's got to the point now where not only do it's actually quite bad. I find it very difficult to train outside of my gym, in a commercial gym somewhere else. I find it very difficult to train. The vibe is really different. It's when you train, it's like, imagine someone's been locked in their house for many years, and then they go outside and go to someone else's house. It's all going to feel very strange. So the vibe's not there. They're playing Kiss FM instead of playing Mongolian throat singing. And none of the equipment. I don't have any machines in the garage, and they don't have any stones in their gym. So it all is a very, very, very odd and very strange to me. So yeah, I'd feel as uncomfortable in a commercial gym as a commercial gym goer feels inside of mine.
100%, man. I think around about, when would it have been, Ali? Around about May, I think there was an announcement in Scotland, and it was like, gyms aren't going to open till October. And I instantly went, fuck this. And I had a little summer house that was kind of abandoned. It wasn't really used. And I extended it and got some weights in there, some kettlebells. I've got a squat rack and stuff. And one of the things, funnily, you're talking about your Swiss ball, is I bought 2 slam balls, a 15 and a 35. And one of the most fun things is picking up the 35, throwing it on my shoulder, and chasing after it. It's just fun. It's like a really fun movement, and bloody hard work. So, and I the last time I was in a commercial gym is the one in my village, and it's a council gym, and I was doing sprints. I think I usually do them outside, but it was like pissing down the rain and fucking 100 miles an hour wind in Scotland. So I'll go do them on the treadmill. And I just went in to do whatever it was. And some guy was laughing at me because what I was doing on the treadmill.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that all you're doing, pal?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what I'm doing? Like, I've just came in here and you're fucking telling me, you think I'm a moron. Oh, okay. Just went, yeah, that's all I'm doing, man. I'll see you later. Bye. And, it's one of those things where you go, I don't fit in here. I don't belong here.
100%. I could.
Because not on a Smith machine. I don't fit in here at all, man. Like this is not for me.
That's it. I don't want to have to
yeah.
deal with anyone else's rubbish when I'm working out. Definitely not.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So, So where did the jiu-jitsu journey start for you?
So I've been training jiu-jitsu for about 15 years now. So I've been training for quite a long time. And I kind of almost fell into doing jiu-jitsu. I was doing many different martial arts as a kid. Never, when I say a kid, about 13, 14 years old, I really wanted to do. My mum at the time never wanted me to do any martial arts. She didn't like the idea of me fighting full stop. It's always funny how these sort of things turn out. But she didn't want me doing any martial arts as a young child, like when most kids do martial arts, sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. But sort of having a little bit more say in what I was doing with my life at sort of 13, 14. Started trying different martial arts. I did a few weeks here, a few weeks there. Never really liked anything too much. Started at a traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu academy. And kind of enjoyed it a little bit. I stuck there longer than anywhere else, but never really grabbed me. And then one day, there were 2 instructors there. One of the instructors left, and the other instructor took over. And he had been training with Roger Gracie for a couple of years. At that point, he was a blue belt, and he slowly So basically, I never went to a jiu-jitsu academy. I went to a Japanese jiu-jitsu academy, which very, very luckily became a Brazilian jiu-jitsu academy. And when it became a grappling academy, then that was it, and I was hooked. And that's the gym that I trained at since then, the whole time.
Especially back there, if you're talking, did you say when you were 15 or 15 years ago? Sorry, Dan.
Both.
Both. Okay. But I suppose back then a blue belt would have been like an absolute superhero, because there just wasn't blue belts back then, was there?
You're absolutely right. I remember a couple of stories. So first thing, my instructor who I was referring to there, who was a blue belt, Nick Brooks. I remember thinking very early on when I was training jiu-jitsu, my goal is to become a blue belt by the time I'm 21. 5 years time. That's my 5-year goal, is to become a blue belt, because now it's different. It's different in 2 ways. One, there are so many blue belts now. It's so common. It's not a big deal when there were so few back then. But I do actually think the standard of blue belt, for the most part, the average standard of blue belt back then was much higher, because there was such a small number. And Nick Brooks as a blue belt was a encyclopedia. It was unbelievable. I'm thinking it's going to take me a lifetime to get the amount of knowledge that this guy has. Any question you ask, there were 100 things that he could tell you, and then you go from here to here to here to here, and you can't keep up. Maybe part of that is that's just what happens when someone who doesn't know any jiu-jitsu talks to someone who knows a little bit of jiu-jitsu. But he just I felt like he was an encyclopedia, even a blue belt, which you don't expect from a blue belt these days. And the second story when it comes to that is the first jiu-jitsu tournament I ever entered, the Hereford Open. It was the first ever Hereford Open. It wasn't even a BJJ tournament. It was called a ground fighting tournament. And there were so few blue belts that it was not necessary to state in the tournament what belt the division was. There were no belt divisions. Everyone was a white belt. You didn't even have to say anything. So I'm competing in this division, and I'm like, I'm a white belt, and everyone else is the white belt, and then a blue belt walks in for the open weight. And you imagine now how insignificant, sorry for the blue belts out there, but they know how insignificant it is to be a blue belt now. Well, back then in 2005 or 6, whenever it was, this blue belt walks into the room, and it was like, I don't know, a superstar walked into the room. It would be like Roger Gracie walked into the room today. That's what it was like. And I remember as a 15-year-old kid looking up at my instructor like, oh my God, he's got a blue belt and he's going to fight in this division. And Nick looking down at me and nodding his head, and this blue belt came in, and he entered this. It wasn't a white belt division. It was just a grappling division. And no one else had a white belt, and obviously wiped the floor with everyone. So the difference between then and now is just crazy.
That's true. And it's funny that you mentioned that blue belts are morons, because both me and Chris are blue belts.
Hey, I didn't say that. Don't put words in my mouth. Not morons, just insignificant is what I was saying.
It was funny. We were talking this morning. Not that we were training jiu-jitsu, because obviously that's highly illegal. But we were talking this morning in a building that had a matted floor. And we were just talking about the levels to blue belt. Sometimes it feels like, some guys get their blue belts far too easy, and then there's other guys, we know, friends who are blue belts and fucking savages, just like genuinely very, very legit. And there's this really vast difference in the level of blue belts. I don't know yet because I'm not there, but I don't know if that's the case at purple and brown, even black. But blue belt seems to be like a real massive difference in abilities. So it's quite. Is that something you've found?
Oh yeah, 100%. And that is absolutely true for all belts: blue, purple, brown, and black.
Okay.
And it's actually it's really basic logic if you think about it. Sort of what the second law, I believe, of thermodynamics is entropy, or even the first law of thermodynamics is entropy. Everything becomes more chaotic. It doesn't become less chaotic. When you have one blue belt, let's say, for example, you have the first ever blue belt, that is the only standard of blue belt. They are both the best and the worst blue belt in the world. Now you get a second blue belt and they're a little bit better than them. And now you have a range. You have the best blue belt and the worst blue belt, and they're very close together, potentially. Relatively, they're next to each other. And then you get a third one who's worse. And now you've got the top one, the bottom one, the middle one. And the more blue belts you get, the wider that spectrum is going to become. So the longer time goes on, the bigger the entropy becomes. You're going to have the blue belt, which is so much better than all the other blue belts, is going to be phenomenal. You'll have blue belts that are black belt level, that are submitting black belts, no problem. There'll be blue belts out there that can submit the majority of black belts, standard club level black belts. And then there'll be blue belts that are incredibly low level. So you're always going to have that natural widening of the spectrum for increasing in numbers. Obviously, blue belt is the first belt that you get in jiu-jitsu, which means that is going to be the one where there's always going to be the highest number of people, which means there's always going to be the vastest difference between the high level and the low level. But as you see more, the exact same thing happened, and I've had this exact same conversation when referring to the standard of black belts in this country, which is when there were 3 black belts in this country, that was the standard. When there's 300 black belts in this country, the standard is going to be much, much bigger. You're going to have incredibly high level, international level, winning gold medals in international tournaments. And then you're going to have someone who's just trained for 12 years and they train twice a week, or, they haven't really trained much in the last few years, but they just got it on time. And it's naturally going to happen. That's just it's a mechanism of life, really.
Yeah, it's funny because our professor, Dan Reed, he's a friend of ours as well, and he trained with Craig Jones right before Craig Jones kind of broke out. I think that was the year he beat Leandro Lowe and stuff at ADCC. And Dan said, it didn't make sense. He was ready to quit because what the fuck is this? This guy is just walking through me and fucking me up. And he goes, then he went there and he kind of dominated ADCC that year. And they went, oh, okay, I'm not bad. It's just this guy's on just a different level. Just one of those absolute elite level of the game. But talking about black belts in the UK, is there any matches that you are targeting or haven't had that you would like?
When it comes to matches, this is a question that obviously all competitors get asked a lot. For me, the real goal for me this year was to just be a lot more active in competition. Obviously, it's not a very good year to attempt to hit that goal. That's why I quit my job as an instructor to focus more on my self-training and competing and traveling to compete. I was hoping to get many tournaments under my belt this year, and then sort of obviously not that my world came crashing down, but the world came crashing down, and that wasn't able to happen. So really, for the most part, I just want to get back to having a lot more experience and time on the competition mats. In terms of individual fights, it's when it comes to super fights for me, I'm always looking out for the most interesting matchup, not necessarily the most relevant matchup. I like the freak show matchups. I like the matchups that are going to be entertaining to watch and entertaining to be. Obviously, if I ever get the opportunity to go against very high level people, then I always jump at that opportunity because at the end of the day, given the opportunity to prove yourself against the best people in the world is always a pleasure and honor and part of what it is to be an athlete. So no, there's no one that I'm going to be calling out, but the question is at this point, does it even matter? It's not like any tournaments are going down. So my main focus is to qualify for ADCC and get back on the sort of Olympics of grappling stage once again.
Have fun, it's gonna be good. I was kind of hoping there'd be something late on this year, but I don't see there being anything this year, and possibly not even early next year. I don't see there being any competitions. Before next summer.
So I was really, really gutted the Polaris Quads event, Polaris Squad. Sorry, I've been playing too much Warzone. Polaris Squads event was on the same day that I was already committed to doing commentary on Cage Warriors. Genuinely, I don't think I've ever been more devastated to miss a tournament because I really love the format of a team tournament, and everything was sort of perfect for me. So very, very, and then to rub salt into the wound, Polaris go and book a second squad event, but they're doing it in a gi, which I haven't competed in the gi since I was a purple belt. So we're talking 8 years ago, maybe was the last time I competed in the gi. So I doubt I'm going to get onto the squad to compete in the gi. So very, very disappointing to not be able to get on any of these Polaris cards, but also very cool to see that they're still running cards, and hopefully I can get on one in the future. Not too far, not too far away.
Sorry, Chris. Funny you mentioned the gi there, Daniel, because again, when we weren't doing jiu-jitsu this morning because it's illegal, we were also talking about the fact that I don't, and Chris as well, don't train very often in the gi, and a couple of the guys who train in the gi a lot, and the difference between the two, people that don't train in both sort of styles, no gi and gi, don't really appreciate how different the two games are. When you get the gi on and those collar chokes and the grips are different. It's a completely different animal.
Yeah, and to go more in depth with that, it's also very relevant what style of grappling the person that you're rolling against is doing, and what style of grappling you have as an athlete. So for example, if someone for many years I trained majority in the gi, and then for many years I trained 50-50. I would train exclusively no gi when preparing for a no gi tournament, and then exclusively gi when preparing for a gi tournament. So I played a very no gi based game even when I was wearing the gi. Now, if someone tries to play a no-gi style game with me in the gi, it's very, very easy. I find if you do that, trading in the gi is almost like a cheat code. It's unfair because all of the moves just become easier when you put the gi on. They just become easier. So on the few times that I've chucked the gi on, and I really do mean a few times, I think I've worn a gi no more than 10 times since I got my black belt, which was 6 years ago. So you can do the maths on that. But on the few times that I've rolled in the gi since I got my black belt, I found it unbelievable how easy I found it. Now here's the thing. If someone plays a gi-based game, they play a lot of the Pell Guard or Reverse Della Worm Guard or all of those bollocks, all of that sort of stuff. It's at that point that I really, really struggle, and the lack of being comfortable and aware of what's going on with the gi stuff really becomes prevalent. So, there is a big difference, but that difference can be small depending on how you play versus your opponent, and it could be massive depending how you and your opponent play.
Yeah, I mean, we still train once a week in the gi. It's just not something that either of us find all that enjoyable. I don't get excited. I don't get excited to go train the gi. I do get excited to train no gi. and I want to do some sub only no gi stuff, whereas gi point stuff is just
Yeah,
doesn't
and
yeah just
and
it's
at
just
the
not
end of the
exciting.
day, at the end of the day, this is a hobby for you guys. So you
Yeah,
should just do
100%.
whatever you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy
Yeah.
training the gi, don't do gi. And if you don't enjoy training no gi, don't do no gi. And if you don't enjoy
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu at all, then don't do jiu-jitsu at all. At the end of the day, it's a hobby and you should do whatever you enjoy.
100%. I was smiling there as you were talking, Daniel, about the difference of the no gi game and the gi game and talking it through. And that was very much a black belt answer as opposed to my blue belt answer. Well, it's pure different, yeah. It's pure
Very
different.
different.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a blue belt answer to your black belt answer. That was
Well, no answers are simple with me, unfortunately. I like to blabble crap
I
too
like
much.
that. So
I like
this is so are you very much into philosophy in terms, because it seems like you're very much into philosophy in terms of your training and your jiu-jitsu, but is that something that you like to think about with everyday life? Is that is it a deep thought?
Sure. I do. I like to train, and that training, it comes in a that comes in a physical way with the strength and conditioning work that I do. It becomes in a skill-based way, be that jujitsu or be that learning other skills outside of jujitsu. I believe that the muscles of your body must be trained, and I said this on a podcast quite recently, actually, but the human body has an unbelievable capacity to change. Unbelievable. A capacity to change which is staggering, that nobody truly appreciates. That you can have small arms and you can do something and your arms will get bigger. It's actually unbelievable. It's so slow that people don't realize it. But imagine if you could click your fingers and your arms were twice the size. It might not happen when you click your fingers, but in 6 months' time, your arms can be twice the size. So you can do things. You can learn to jump further and to run faster and to lift heavier things. And you have an unbelievable capacity to change and give yourself abilities. And those things don't just come physically. Those things come when it comes to your brain and your mind as well. And you should train in the same way that you should train in a magnitude of different ways to make sure that you have a well-rounded physicality. I also believe that you should train the mind in many ways as well, be that reading and learning, doing skills, working coordination. A lot of my training is based around, a lot more over the last couple of years, is based around balance and coordination and, kind of reconnecting, especially the left and right. A lot of people, especially their dominant hand, if they're right-handed, for example, they're able to do everything with the right hand and they're not able to do anything with the left hand. So working on sort of connecting the two sides of your brain. When it comes to philosophy, do I consider myself a philosopher? Absolutely not. I will look into some stuff when it comes to philosophy because, I like to be relatively well read on all topics. It's not something that I could start quoting, specific, well, not very many specific philosophers. But in terms of what it boils down to is I'm very detail orientated and I like to get quite deep into whatever it is. When I do an arm bar, I don't just want to know how to do it. I want to understand the mechanism behind how that works. And that comes the same as anything that I do. I always find that the devil is in the detail and really the enjoyment is in the detail as well. My favorite thing about jiu-jitsu is showing someone not a big elaborate move, but showing someone something absolutely minuscule that will make a massive difference. That's what I love about grappling.
That's one of the things that I love the most is when you're trying something, whether it's whatever the move is, whether it's an armbar or a guillotine or whatever it is, and you're just about getting it, and then you go to a seminar, one of your seminars, or whoever, and they say all you need to do is just reposition your hips. You just need to move your hips by this amount, and then all of a sudden it's every time perfect. That's the best feeling. It's when it's these tiny little details. It's super interesting. So it sounds like you like to get a little kind of primal.
So I'm just plugging my laptop back in 1 sec.
You're good.
Oh, sorry.
Plugging my laptop in before it dies. There we go. We're all good.
that
Yeah,
it?
sorry. What
Yeah,
were you saying?
it sounds like you like to get a little sort of primal because you like to be at not to be all happy, but you kind of like to be kind of at one with nature and to understand, like you say, mechanism. It's just like you'd like to understand everything around about you. So it's kind of like you like to get a little primal. So
Yeah, I think it all comes down. One of the most badass and coolest, but also I believe truthful quotes is the civilize the mind and make savage the body. It's such a cool, badass sounding quote, but I really believe that there's actually a lot of really good advice there, which is that you need to balance. Everything in life's about balance. It really is. There is absolutely nothing that is. Every single thing, regardless of what it is on a spectrum. There's too much, there's too little, and somewhere in between, it's just right. And that can be applied to absolutely everything in life. There's nothing that is going to be too extreme, and nothing's going to be good if you take it too extreme, and nothing's going to be good if you take it to not. Or nothing's going to be bad if you don't do anything. If you do something, So yeah, I believe it's all about finding that balance between learning and understanding and living in a modern society and understanding what that means, but also not getting too detached from who we are as human beings. So and that's another thing that I've been working. I think a lot of people have been working over the last year as we've been in lockdown for a long time. People have realized they've gone outside a lot more, they've walked a lot more, they've really taken check of their body. A lot of people for the first time, this idea, which is something that I've been doing for a while, but it's starting to get a lot more traction, of rewilding yourself in some ways, getting out into nature, taking your shoes off and walking barefoot through the woods, and understanding how your body moves naturally and trying to emulate that and reprogram yourself to what is a lot more and when it comes to eating as well, eating how you would eat, how we've evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to eat, and not over the last 200 years of this overly manufactured and over processed types of food. So yeah, it's all about balance. And when it comes to training, sometimes you got to get savage and throw some rocks around, and sometimes you got to be civilized and play a game of chess.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
It starts from a very young age, that though, as well, doesn't it? I've got 3 kids, and I remember when they were 8, 9, 10, maybe at the various stages as they were, taking them like wandering through the woods and stuff, but getting them climbing trees, and they were like, "Oh, this could be dangerous." I was like, "Yes, it can be," which is why we're going to do it, because climbing trees is fun. And after that first 10, 15 seconds of nervousness that all kids have when they're trying something new, they suddenly realised it was really good fun to climb up trees and swing from branches and fall down, and they're like, "Oh no, my clothes are muddy." I was like, "That's cool, we've got a washing machine. Like, it's not the end of the world." Like, "Oh, my hands are all dirty, I need to clean them." Because nah, it's fine, it's a little bit of dirt, just dust it off. We're all good here. Keep moving. I think there's been a change over the last, maybe the last generation or so, where it has moved away from that. There's almost been a generation of parents that have grown up not doing that, so they don't want their kids doing that. Like, "Oh, don't jump in puddles because you'll get muddy." That's okay, kids are allowed to get muddy.
Yeah, man.
100%. And I think in general, we're living in quite a scary time to have kids, I think. And I don't have any kids. I don't plan on having kids in the immediate future, but at some point I do plan on having kids if that comes to happen. And I can't imagine the difficulties of raising kids in a really truly modern society. The difference between today and just when I was a child is so staggering, where there were no smartphones when I was a kid. Not that it was even that long ago. I'm getting on, but only talking 20 years ago, I was 10 years old, and I didn't have access to any smartphones. And now all of these kids at 4 or 5 years old, even younger sometimes. I have a nephew who is 4 years old, and he can work an iPad better than most adults can work an iPad. And it really terrifies me, actually, because and without getting too deep into this hole, but you brought up the kids, and I do find it such an interesting subject. The problem with me on podcasts is that I would talk for hours about absolute crap and then divert onto more stuff. But I won't stay too long in it. But the problem is that these things that we have here, these terrible but fantastic rectangles of power and evil and good and everything in between, they are designed, and the apps that are on them, they are hacked to get into our mind. They are literally designed to draw our attention and to keep our attention. They're made by geniuses that have used all of the psychology over hundreds of thousands of years that we've adapted in our brain and the way that our brains are built, and they've taken that and they've used it against us to make us addicted to them. And when that happens to an adult, hopefully at 30 years old, you can work out, I'm on my phone too much, I've got to go for a walk. But when that is in your life from the age of 4 or 5 years old, or 6 or 7 even, it's very, very young, and you're born and you're brought up around this electronic device that is sucking your attention. I generally, and that might be a case that every generation worries about the next generation, but I genuinely worry about how difficult it will be as parents to keep kids growing up in a way that isn't all consumed in technology. It's scary.
And it's really true. My daughter's 11, and she is one of the ones that's had an iPhone for about 2.5 years now. And in fairness, she was one of the last ones in her class to get an iPhone.
Yeah, that's very late. That's very late.
Then every year for birthday and Christmas, can I get an iPhone? And me and my wife were like, no, too young. And then Sandra would speak to the other mums and like, oh yeah, she's had an iPhone and an iPad, as you say, since she was 3 or 4.
That's the problem.
And you kind of start to feel, you don't want your kid to feel left behind. And then you get her the phone, and as you say, Daniel, and don't get me wrong, there are times where I'll go through at night and I'll switch off, and she'll, at 11 years old, throw a tantrum over the fact of taking her phone off her because it's hacked, and it's almost like that junkie fix of, I just need to swipe one more time. I need to do that one more time and see what might have appeared on my timeline. And I'm
it's really not like a junkie. It is an addiction. It is absolutely an addiction, in the same way that you can be addicted to gambling. You could be addicted to anything, and they are. And you're right, man. It's scary, and you're absolutely right, which is because it's so culturally accepted and it's so easy. That's the problem with a kid at 4 or 5 years old. You give them, it might not be an iPad, it may be the kids' version of an iPad. You know, it's just got a couple of games and TV shows, but a lot of people, it will be an iPad with YouTube on it to watch Peppa Pig or whatever. And you got to go get some washing done. You got to go get some laundry done. So what do? You give the iPad to the kid. You chuck on Peppa Pig. You chuck on Candy Crush or whatever they want, and they start playing that. So they're indoctrinated into this technology from an extremely young age. And then you're absolutely right. You know, you're the only parent whose kid doesn't have an iPod by the time they're 10 years old. And then the kid isn't going to, a 10-year-old isn't going to understand that you're doing this for the greater good. And then you look like the arsehole, and you've got to end up conceding to it. And that's the problem that we're all going to have. It's a terrifying thought. But I didn't mean to bring the tone of the podcast down at all with that.
This is why, funnily enough, we were kind of talking about this with Bert Soren from Soren X in America just last week. That's and awesome. One of the coolest things you can do is, and I just did it recently, was went and climbed a mountain at night to watch sunrise, and just fucking on my own. And Ben Nevis it was actually. So I climbed Ben Nevis for sunrise, and I had the mountain to myself, and this is fucking awesome. Like, this is just completely like a reset, like a mental reset to go, sun's coming up. This is awesome. So, the next time you're in Scotland, man, if you want to climb a Munro at night, I'm your man.
Sounds good to me.
On that same, just before we go off the topic of this, we were saying a couple of years ago, I'm 42, so I've got ages on all of us on this podcast. But I got invited to a 21st birthday party of a couple of a lassie who's at work with me. And I thought, I can totally still hang with 21-year-olds. Let's do that. And I walked in, and I was out with something else, and then went to their party. And I grew up obviously partying and drinking in like the late 90s through the early 00s. And I walked in, and literally everyone was on the dance floor, all with their phone in their hand, front-facing camera, just looking at it, giving it the whole tight face, the double fingers.
Sad, isn't it?
All the guys were at the tables, texting and messaging, no one making eye contact. They all came back to the tables, all sat on their phone. They're taking pictures, looking at it, deleting it, retaking it.
And here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing. Is that they spend the whole night taking pictures, not talking to anyone, not actually having a good time. But the next day, they post the picture to Instagram. Best night ever. awesome
Yeah.
night. You know, can't wait to do it again. Even though you had a shit time because you spent the whole time taking pictures of your face, pulling a stupid duck face. It's horrible, man. It's awful.
Absolutely. The worst part of it all, though, the worst part of it all was the fact I was the only one on the dance floor doing the dance to Saturday night. Everyone else was just watching me like an idiot. Hey, I'm I don't care.
Instagram live in it.
I don't even doubt that one. It's funny because one of the coolest things, one of the saddest things and coolest things is watching the Linkin Park, they had an album, One More Light Out, and I think they were doing like crawling or something, whatever it was, and Chester Bennington went right into the crowd, and everybody's standing there with a phone in his face.
Yeah.
And I've watched this video so many times. So there's 100 people right around about him, and they're all with the phone, except from one guy.
Yeah.
Who's just singing his heart out, and it was that guy.
Yeah.
He's fucking doing it. He's doing it right.
Yeah, 100%.
Phone's in his pocket, and he's actually in the moment he's standing in front of Chester Bennington. Like, what the? That's amazing.
Yeah.
But everybody else is just kind of watching it through a screen. You're like, come on, man. Yeah, this guy is doing it properly. So, yeah, it's a crazy world we live in, man. It's a crazy
Yes,
world we live in, and it's only getting crazier. So yeah, what is there anything immediately coming up that's exciting?
Not really, to be honest. Who knows? I'm in England. You guys don't have it quite as bad, but I know you guys are having problems at the moment. It looks like that we're not too far away from going back into another national lockdown. So it's a horrible time. I'm optimistic, and I think that by spring next year, hopefully early spring next year, this whole virus thing will be gone really for good. I'm optimistic that will happen. I'm not waiting out for a vaccine. I believe that once we hit this entire year cycle, we're gonna get everything under control, and then life can get back to normal. It's just not cool, for me. I love traveling and I love teaching jiu-jitsu in different gyms, and jiu-jitsu is essentially outlawed. Is the realistic, which sounds cool because you can, it sounds like a plot out of some sort of dystopian future, when jiu-jitsu is gone underground and everyone, which is basically what people are doing.
I have to ask you this now: is this the plot to the new Nicolas Cage jiu-jitsu film? Is that what this is?
Did you see my Instagram story today?
No, not seen that one.
I posted about the Nicolas. That's so funny you bring it up, because earlier today I posted. Have you seen the trailer for it?
Yes.
I've not. No.
Oh my god! You know what? Are you on your laptop right now?
Yes, swords.
No, I'm not. No.
You're not. You're on your phone, or?
I'm on my phone.
I was gonna say you should watch the trailer right now, but I wouldn't want to subject anyone listening to watching it. It's about aliens. It's some aliens, and it looks like a budget version of Predator. It looks awful, but what are you gonna do? So no, but yeah. Anyway, what I was actually saying was, I don't. Unfortunately, I'm unable to go and teach seminars and do what I love doing. So at the moment, it's sort of just cracking on, training and staying fit, staying strong, staying on the mats. I'm nursing a bit of an injury at the moment, but hopefully a couple of weeks I'll be back to full training. And that's it. Take it from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of waiting it out at the moment.
Yeah, there's not much anybody else can do. So we are just over an hour now, so it's getting. Normally we'd say it's getting late where you are or where we are, but now it's fucking getting late for all of us, and I have to swim in the morning. So
okay, right.
We'll start winding down. Just before we dive off, we always add this in. Just if people want to find out more and see your cool Instagram posts, and they can also go to Suplex or Stability Ball, where can they find you? And we'll tag this in the video and in the notes as well, Daniel.
My Instagram is at Raspberry_Ape. You can find me there. You can find my YouTube channel is youtube.com/Raspberry Ape, where you can watch a few videos that I put out. But you can watch Stones and Strangles, which is the documentary that I made about going to Scotland and lifting stones and teaching jiu-jitsu. And you can watch my podcast as well, which is the Raspberry Ape podcast, which you can find on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, and all of the other good podcast directories. Or you can go to raspberryape.com and buy a singlet like the one that you were talking about earlier today.
Ali's getting one. Do you have some Raspberry Ape t-shirts?
I have a few Raspberry Ape Guillotine Tour T-shirts. They're 2 years old now, which officially makes them vintage. They're quite cool actually. I did them in the style of like a Iron Maiden T-shirt, so they're pretty cool. I have some Raspberry Ape rash guards, and I'm hopefully releasing I am releasing a grip training instructional video that will be on that site hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Do you still have the lumberjack?
The lumberjack, the Raspberry Ape collaboration with Scramble lumberjack to wear, buffalo check, red and black buffalo check, lumberjack rash guard with the denim look Valley Tudo shorts. They have pretty much sold out on Scramble. I think there's a few places that still sell them. I'm considering buying a small batch in to sell through my website, but at the moment they're very, very exclusive at the moment.
It was a super cool idea actually. It was one of those ones I never got one at the time. I can't remember why. Life's busy and I didn't get one, but it was one of those things you go, and it actually gave me so I've made a couple of rash cards for our class, and I'm working on and I'll make sure you get one. I'll when we get them made. So I have a Scottish themed one.
Awesome.
In fact, what I'll do is I will send you a picture of it once we get off here, and I promise you it's fucking awesome. And it really is a good idea. So once I get those made up, I'll message you and I'll make sure you get one of those. And it was your lumberjack one was kind of a little bit of I got ideas from that. So awesome. It was super cool. I'll send you the picture once we've done here. But
nice.
Thanks for your time, man. It was a really
absolute
nice
pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Man,
definitely.
absolutely.
Thanks so much. Episode 45, Daniel Strauss, Raspberry Ape, Silly Goose Gang. It's been fun.
The Silly Goose Gang Podcast.